Alrighty. Pouring rain out, but we are now headed home for the day to go do some weightlifting. So, back into it now. Over the weekend while we were at the Arnold, had a random, whoa there, bud. Had a random training session there. We had 20 minutes-ish from when we ate to when the next session we had to get ready for was. Went to the train hall, like, hey, we close in 20 minutes. Like, all right, cool. I guess we're doing EMOM all the way up. So, did some power clean plus push press till it got heavy. 110, started getting a little shaky. I'm like, all right, cool, we'll move on. And then cut that out, dropped down 100, and just did cleans all the way up, hit 150. 5 kilo PR. I think I've only hit 145, and that was on a women's bar, so it had a little extra whip. So on like a men's bar, 13-ish kilos. I think 137 was probably the most I had hit. So regardless, a lot more weight and no belts, running shoes, no knee sleeves, really nothing at all to prepare me to be able to do that weight or to give me assistance in that weight. And yeah, it was pretty easy. Whoa! We lost that there. I gotta tighten that shit back up. But it was pretty easy. So I'm like, all right, cool. Well, like, I have a powerlifting meet in 3 weeks, and I'm pretty fucking bored with the process of powerlifting at the moment. It's just a very boring sport. Like, it's either you got the strength or you don't. There's no real, like, chance to, like, oh, I may miss it because of this. I may miss it because of this. I really have to tighten this thing back up. No chance of, like, oh, I could drop this bar on my head and kill myself or break another shoulder. So the whole, like, little fear aspect and the chance aspect I like a lot. So we may be headed back to weightlifting. Did some no contact the other day. We are doing some yo-yos today. So what we're looking like is most likely 5 days a week of weightlifting. So 2 variation days snatch, 2 variation days clean jerk throughout the week, and then a heavy total day on Saturday. So we'll see what we can hit on that heavy total day. But getting into it, so the nuances and those little, like, micro things to focus on weightlifting don't fucking matter. You should not focus on the nuances at all. Giant waste of fucking time. So saw a video earlier, was talking about really thinking about having your wrist down in the lifts. There's always that stuff of, oh, should I catch the bar overhead with my shoulders internally or externally rotated? Stuff about where should my toes point, all of that jazz. How hard should my feet, should they come up, should they not come up? And at the end of the day, like, for a very large percentage of people, those things really do not fucking matter and just should not be thought about at all. Ooh, little hydroplane in there. But at the end of the day, like, focusing on so much of that minutia, like, in specific, like, that one about knuckles down, like, that is so hyper specific. Is that really going to have any sort of benefit on your weightlifting? When you most likely hump the bar, when you most likely don't even get straight up, when you most likely don't even get into your power position, don't even get your knees under. When you are so bad, or so just, we'll just say, yeah, so bad at so many other things, those knuckles down aren't going to do shit. So for the vast majority of people, really, like, focusing on those little minutia is just taking away from where your focus should be. Hey, am I balanced? Is this bar coming towards me off the ground? Am I keeping it close? Am I dragging it at my body? Am I punching under it? All of the big things that are actually going to make a very large difference. Like, if you can keep that bar closer, you're going to have a better chance of making the lift versus just keeping your knuckles down. If you get your knees back and scoot back under versus just humping in front of you, you're going to have a much better chance of making the lift. So we look at all these like, oh, here is this exact hack that I needed. My knuckles weren't facing down. Oh, here's the big thing why I can't snatch 100 is my shoulders were internally rotated. They need to be externally rotated, vice versa, whatever the fuck you want to talk about. Really, like for a large portion of those things, just let your body do what it wants to do. Like, I have never once told a single athlete or anyone I've spoken about weightlifting whether they should internally or externally rotate their shoulders. Like, that is not something that you should be thinking about. Just let your body go where it goes. Something like that. If you are trying to think about actively rotating your shoulder one way or the other while you are lifting, while you're throwing a weight overhead, it's probably like a recipe for disaster, I would think. Like, if you, in that little quarter of a split second that the lift actually takes place, if you're trying to actively rotate your shoulder in the socket, if you mess up even a tiny degree and that weight comes down on you, you're a little bit fucked. So not only like is it just like, hey, focus on the basics and you'll get a lot more out instead of focusing on these like negligible tiny things, you also may just have a bigger risk because now you're putting more thoughts in your head, so you're automatically slowing yourself down. That motor pattern is now going through a couple more processes to get through because you're adding more variables, more content into the area, into your brain, into what you're focusing on. And then just overall, yeah, it's just really not necessary. Like, there's shit like that where your shoulders are going to go where they go. Like, your body is going to self-organize itself into the best position possible. Now, like, when you first start out and you have really shitty technique, like coming from CrossFit, that is your body's most efficient way to complete the task. Cool. We know, like, hey, we got to fix some things. So now we start to get into, like, some of these negligible things, like, hey, rotate this way, hey, do this, do that. So there is a place for it, but just putting out this giant thing to the world of, hey, here's why your snatch sucks, is because your knuckles aren't down. That's complete bullshit. 99% of you should not even think about your fucking knuckles, let alone 20 other things. Like, focus on, like, the big things we know that are commonalities across everyone. Like, hey, the bar definitely should not go away from us during the lift. We know that. If you want to, like, you know, fight with gravity a little bit more and throw the bar forward, sure. But if we want to lift the most weight possible, the bar has to go in a fairly up or in towards us position. The farther away from our body it gets, the harder it will be to lift. Can't lift as much weight. Cool, we know that. Things that fall have acceleration. If we throw a bar over our head and let it drop on us, that is going to be a lot heavier and a lot harder to lift than if we actively punch under the bar and can position ourselves with the barbell. Cool, we should probably do that. So there's a lot of big things we know. They're like, hey, these are like actual, like, not laws, but like kind of like laws. Like, hey, that bar should probably go up if we want to get under it. Pretty clear. Whereas things like, again, like, hey, rotate your shoulder this way, do this, do that, like, that can be person dependent. Like, it can be beneficial for sure, but it's probably not the thing you need to be focusing on, because I say this as someone who posts on social media of weightlifting, but if you are getting your focuses for weightlifting from Instagram instead of a coach, you're probably missing the point in the first place. Again, I say that as someone who is posting content to Instagram and YouTube, so I see the irony there. But really, like, you should be working with a coach. You should be working with someone who has an idea of what they're doing, whether that's actual coaching, whether it's just someone you know and you're sending them videos, or you're just posting shit and hoping someone responds to you in the ether, like Reddit, the Reddit weightlifting community, a ton of people post shit on there. But just getting random things off Instagram that aren't applied to you probably is not the best approach to take for fixing your weightlifting technique. Crazy enough. So, big idea here is most of y'all do not need to be playing around in the nuances when you don't even have the basics mastered. Like, that's pretty common across all industries. You probably don't need to know, like, the multi-million dollar, the billionaire's morning routine if you don't have a job. You probably just need to get a fucking job and figure out how to, like, you know, make a stable income first off. Really, yeah. that's about it. So stop focusing on all the negligible shit. Master the basics, and then let's go from there, and then we can start getting into more of that nuance. Yeah, that's all we got.